Victoria Bruce, welcome to Dirtbag Rich.
Thanks, Blake. I'm happy to be here.
You've written a really powerful and richly detailed book about hiking the length of New Zealand with your 7-year-old daughter. And it really felt to me like this sort of journey of overcoming adversity in the same vein as Wild by Cheryl Strayed or Educated by Tara Westover. And it opens with this wonderful passage in which you are huddling inside your tiny ultralight tent in the middle of a windstorm in a pretty wild part of the South Island of New Zealand. You're cradling your daughter who is sleeping, and it's day 106 of your hike, and you have more than 450 kilometers left to go before you reach the end. And I wanted to start by asking you, in moments like this, did you ever say to yourself, what am I doing here? And if so, what was the answer?
Yeah, absolutely. I can remember that night very clearly. It's an amazing thing to be caught in the middle of a storm in the Southern Alps of New Zealand. There's a lot of power, a lot of energy coming through. And that particular night, the wind was so strong that it was just flattening the tent against my face. And every inch of my body, every cell was just screaming to fight my way out and run screaming to safety. Only there was no safety because, we were hundreds of kilometers from anything resembling civilization. And I just remember having this big internal battle where, you know, part of me was wondering, what the hell am I doing here? As a single mother, I've walked my way, thousands of kilometers to this place where it feels like, the wind is just trying to destroy us. And yet, at the same time, this is the same country that had held us in its arms and allowed us safe passage, wandering through it for the past, so many months. I knew that while I was terrified, and rightly so, I was exactly where I needed to be.
Why? Why did you need to be there? There are so many other places, especially with a young child, that people could say you need to be. Like maybe need to be providing a stable home and a regular school experience, not out here risking possible life and limb for some sort of wild romantic notion of adventure. So, what was the deeper reason that brought you and Emilie out onto the Te Araroa?
Yeah, look, it's a good question, and there's definitely some backstory there. Like, at the time, I was a single mum living in the city in the South Island of New Zealand, and I had all of those things for Emilie: a stable home. I just got my first house. I had a huge mortgage that was being funded by my busy full-time, very stressful job as a communications advisor with the local city council. We had everything in life, and yet, for me, I was just dying inside. I was going through a really difficult period of adulthood where a lot of ghosts from my childhood years had come back into the fore. I'd been diagnosed with a condition called complex post-traumatic stress disorder, which developed, due to adverse childhood experiences, difficult experiences, traumatic experiences in my younger years. And I basically had a breakdown. I couldn't go on with that busy, hectic life where, little Emilie would be the first child before school care, and I would rush off to work and put on my game face and work hard, and then come back home and pick her up from after school care, feed her, wash her, read her a story, put her to bed. And then I would just, go to bed and cry myself to sleep, plus have, nightmares and flashbacks as memories was resurfacing from within me. And all that was really keeping me going during this period in my life was that Emilie and I had discovered tramping, which is the New Zealand term for hiking. And on our weekends, we were getting our backpacks and our little yellow tent and going off for adventures in our local hills. And it was out here um, in these wild places where I was discovering another side to myself, a side of myself that was joyful, that was strong, that felt free and felt at home. I felt connected, very deeply connected to the New Zealand bush. It felt as though actually out here was the real world, with the trees breathing and living and dying and all the beautiful plants and the birds and nature, big mother nature just doing her thing, keeping us all alive. And yeah, I guess it was a deeply kind of spiritual um time where, for somebody who'd felt very disconnected in life, I felt very deeply connected out there. And so at this point in time when, I was having a breakdown, I thought to myself that that's where I need to go. I need to get away from all of this mess and noise and chaos. And I need to go out into nature and reconnect with myself and, yeah, find out what's hurting me so badly and take my little daughter with me and show her all the joy and magic that can be found in a life lived outdoors.
And we're going to circle back later to your earlier experiences, which you detail in harrowing precision in the book. And also, I'll be asking you about, your daughter's part that she was playing in this. Was she just being invited or dragged along by mom, or was she buying into this? But first, I want to focus on the experience of tramping itself. And I actually would like to read a short passage from your book that I took down because it really encapsulates what you just said about this different kind of feeling that you had being out in nature. This is what you wrote. There's that feeling of excitement and anticipation when you're setting off on a tramp, carrying everything you need to be self-contained on your back. The way your heart races when you're scrambling up high, every muscle awake and your body strong and alert as you place one foot in front of the other, grasping for rocks and roots as you pull yourself up. There's a deep satisfaction when you finally pop above the tree line and see the views, or arrive at your destination after a long, hard day of navigating rough terrain, fallen trees, and flowing streams. Then there are those quiet moments of peace when all your thoughts have blown away in the breeze and you're simply present. You, your breath, your body, and the bush all around you. That's why tramping makes me feel like a badass. Certainly. And for those who are not familiar with this trail or the terrain of New Zealand in general, just give us a little slice, give us some details of what it's like to walk and tramp in New Zealand on this trail called the Te Araroa.
Yeah, absolutely. New Zealand is a beautiful country, and Te Araroa is, it's like a jewel in the crown of our country. We have these North and South Islands. They are about 2,000 kilometers long each. And this trail, it comprises its multiple walking tracks and trails, crossing a tapestry of diverse landscapes, from sandy beaches to rugged mountain passes, peaceful farm tracks, forestry trails, and it even winds its way through urban streets, going right through our capital city of Wellington. So it's in the South Island, it's very remote. You've got the massive, almost like a backbone of the Southern Alps, which runs the length of the South Island. And, the trail kind of sticks to the eastern side, going up these massive foothills of the Southern Alps, um, mapped out into various sections. The longest section could be 12 days at a time before you pop back out anywhere near civilization or can resupply your food. So, it's very important to be extremely self-contained. The weather is very fickle. We are this tiny island in the, middle of this huge ocean. We get massive fronts that sweep in and, really heavy rain that turns quiet side creeks into roaring rivers. Yeah, huge, empty, wild spaces. Beautiful.
And what is the mental and emotional experience of tramping for you? The passage I just read reveals some of it, but what do you find tramping that you can't find elsewhere?
Mm. I just love the sense of being with the sense of connection, with the landscape that I'm passing through, but also that sense of being completely present within myself. And I don't mean in my mind, I mean with my entire being, that focus when every part of your body is sort of moving in this, perfect synchrony, your balance and your breath and, the way that your eyes, how deeply you notice, is the rock slippery? How much weight can I put on it? How fast can I jump across it? Um, yeah, the way that the sunlight, dapples through the canopy onto the leaf litter, little birds that come to visit you. There's this immense sense of peace and joy and physical challenge that kind of all comes together in this, wonderful sense of completion.
And was it the healing experience that you were hoping it would be?
Yeah, it was absolutely healing. I The experience that I thought it would be, I think, naively, it was naive to assume that one can heal a lifetime of hurts in, a set time frame, a period of 6 months, which is how long it took us to walk the length of Te Araroa. Um, but there was a lot of time for emotional processing, and there was a lot of big emotions that were released. So, yeah, absolutely, it was healing. And we have to remember too that healing hurts. It's meant to
Mm.
hurt. It's normal, but it's also very confronting and uncomfortable. And combine that with having a, 10 to 15, maybe even 20 kilo pack on your back at times. And, your dirty socks and damp clothes, difficult terrain, plus, the responsibility of having a delightful little 7-year-old girl at your side, chattering away, making sure that you're taking care of her happiness and well-being.
Yeah, that's exactly what I wanted to talk about next, which was Emilie's experience. And in the book, you detail how she is very outgoing and talking with everyone on the trail and in the towns, and is a nice counterweight to your more reserved nature. But I think the first concern that a lot of people have is just what was it like for her physically, and was this a sort of, you know, unwanted endurance event? And so, yeah, tell us about how she dealt with it, both physically and socially, emotionally.
Absolutely. I'll start off by saying that Emily and I had started overnight hikes together when she was 4. So we'd been on, you know, um, dozens of trips and some long multi-day trips together before we even started Te Araroa. In fact, for us, tramping or hiking was definitely our happy place and somewhere, kind of magical where we could go off together into the forest and put up our tent beside a little stream and, look for forest mermaids in the streams and pick flowers. And so, yeah, for me, a big part of my own childhood was, deeply connected to nature. And I wanted to instill this joy and this creativity in her. So before Te Araroa, Emily was already a very well traveled little girl. She'd been to over 50. We have these huts, backcountry huts and shelters throughout New Zealand. It's about over 1,000 of these huts and shelters in our network. And she'd been to more than 50 of them by the time she was 7 years old. And I think our longest hike together was maybe 6 days. So when I said to Emily, how would you like to go on a big adventure with mummy? You know, a 6-month adventure walking the length of New Zealand. She said, wow. And she was keen. She was up for the adventure. And yeah, she found it all very exciting. And, of course, being only 7, there was only so much that she could carry. So of course, physically I'm making sure that she's yeah, that she's safe and not hurting her body. But and the reason it took us 6 months to complete this walk, where on the Te Araroa website, it says a fit person could take 3 to 4 to complete the 3,000-kilometer journey. But as we had little legs and a slower pace, we thought, yeah, maybe we could take 6 months and have regular rest days to, lie around the tent and play and so on. I also, thought for Emily, there is such wonderful experience and education to be had in our natural world. Learning firsthand about how the plants grow and what the birds eat and what's it like when the sun rises and all of these experiences I thought were beautiful for her. And in terms of endurance, I mean, yeah, I remember our first section, which was 100 kilometers walking the length of this place called 90 Mile Beach, which runs from the very, very northern tip of the North Island from a place called Cape Reinga, this wild, rugged coastline and this huge beach as wide as a highway with sand as, hard as packed cement. And we decided to take 6 days walking down this beach. And on the last day, we had 30 kilometers to go until we reached this little tiny township, which we knew had a holiday park. And I said to Emily, when we get there, we'll stay a night at the holiday park and we'll have a nice shower and a bed, get ice cream. And on that day, it rained. A massive front swept through and it just lashed us all the way down the beach. And then it was windy. And I kept saying to her, sweetheart, shall we just pop in the sand dunes and mummy will put up a tent? And she would say, no, I want to keep going. I want to get an ice cream. And she dragged me 30 kilometers down that beach. It got dark. We navigated by the stars and by seeing the lights of the town miles away down the end of the beach. I was totally ready just to put up that tent and yeah, just get there in the morning. But that little girl, I have never seen her so determined. She just kept on walking all the way up to the holiday park. And we staggered in, covered in sand. I tried to speak to the person at the desk, and Emily beat me to it. She skipped right up to the desk and she said, "We've just walked the length of 90. Have you got any ice cream left?" So, right from that, you know, early days, I could see that, yeah, Emily was a little trooper. And yeah, she took so much joy out of her surroundings.
Were there any moments that your interests did not align, mother and daughter, where there was friction, conflict, someone did not want to go and the other one did want to go, someone needed a long break, the other person wanted to get moving again?
Yeah, yeah. Well, in terms of conversation topics, uh, a 7-year-old's choice of conversation topics can sometimes our conversation topics didn't align. Emily and still has this fabulous talent for almost memorizing um, stories and books and cartoons. And she would tell me um, cartoons, and narrate them and put on the funny voices, and they were wonderful. And I remember, oh, one time we were staggering through this place in the Huranui, which is in sort of central Canterbury in the North Island and South Island, and I had this big heavy pack, and I was tired and sore. And she kept talking about dolls. There was these 18-inch dolls called Our Generation that kids like, and all the clothes. And Mummy, did you know that they can get clothes and you can get shoes and you can get fridges and you can get this? Oh, and after a while I said, "Sweetheart, can we just let's just talk about the birds. Look, I think I saw a tomtit." She's not going to talk about your stupid birds.
Wow.
And yeah. And so she storms off, with her little hiking poles smacking at the tussocks. And I just staggered along behind, just, yeah. But I have a really good relationship with my daughter. And I think, that helps a lot. Obviously, I really value and honor the absolute trust and love and deep bond that we have. How much trust that she put in me to come with me on this big journey and make it our big journey, our big badass bush girl journey, you know, giggling and talking and walking the length of New Zealand. It's very special.
So, if you had to get off the trail, or if one of you became sick or injured or just wanted to quit, what would have happened at that point? Because you were renting out your house in Christchurch, and the rental income was covering all the expenses, and so you were able to not worry too much about money during that time, as I understand it. But yeah, did you have a backup plan in case you had to get off the trail?
Yeah, I did have a 15-foot caravan, lovely 1970s retro caravan that I'd left at my property. And in our minds, that was, I guess, an option, that we could just hook up the caravan to the car and, you know, road trip around New Zealand and do hikes to huts and come back to the caravan. Um, yeah, I guess that could have been a slightly less arduous um, plan, but it never eventuated. So we stayed on the trail.
So going on this length and depth of a trip with a child, I feel like is a dream story for many parents and especially many families who have more resources than you did. But what a lot of people lack is the time to do this. Maybe the ability to do the preparation. You visited over 50 huts with Emilie, over some years before embarking on this, so you were physically prepared for it. So in a way, you were especially rich, even though you were very constrained by other material circumstances. It also helps that New Zealand has very liberal homeschooling laws, and so you were able to not go to school for a number of months, and it wasn't a big legal problem. How do you think about your richness? This podcast is called Dirtbag Rich. Did you feel rich during this time? And if so, how?
Oh, absolutely. I would do remember thinking very clearly at times, as my sort of daily schedule was to, we'd get up and have breakfast and pack up the tent and we'd start walking. And sometimes my mind would flick back to my colleagues at my office where I used to work and, think about, oh, is it morning tea time? And oh no, I bet they're all standing there in a meeting. And I think, oh, I'm so glad. I'm so glad I got out of that. I'm so glad that's not me. Um, yeah, here I am, you know, swinging my legs in the sunshine, walking freely, and I can choose to put up my tent tonight anywhere I like. And I've got my beautiful little daughter just glowing by my side. And yeah, I'm free.
Were you worried about what would happen after the hike ended? Was there a clear path forward? Were you going to rejoin your kind of normal high pay, high stress career path, move back into the house that was rented for 6 months, or did you not know what was coming next?
I think after the first week, I realized very clearly that that lifestyle was making me sick, and it was not where I, as a person, actually wanted to be. In fact, yeah, I had many questions for myself, such as, how did I even get here? Um, of course, I understand my career trajectory in that sense, earning money to pay the bills, to provide stability and resources for my child. Yet, yeah, within the first week of walking to Aotearoa, I could feel inside myself very clearly that I did not want to go back to that lifestyle. I did not even want to go back to that house. Um, but what the future held was still unknown. I felt that what I wanted was slower pace of life, one where I could be more present with myself, take better care of myself so that I could be a better mother to take care of my daughter. And what that was going to look like, I wasn't yet sure, but I just tried to walk with an open mind.
So the walk ended a few years ago now. Can you tell me what your life looks like now in terms of work, in terms of money, in terms of time? What is the new balance that you've struck? And I'm especially interested to find out if the Te Awaroa feels like this one big time thing that you did that may never happen again. It's all in the past. It's a memory, it's a book, or whether you are still able to dedicate time, significant time, to being in the outdoors, both by yourself or with friends or with your daughter.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, I mean, in a way, for us, Te Araroa was, oh, it was almost like the launching point for a much richer and deeper outdoor career. Our hiking adventures together have really, we ended the 6 month trail with an incredible amount of accumulated fitness and, much more confidence. Um, you get everything down to a pretty slick regime when you're used to, packing up and knowing what to carry and knowing how to read a map and how to navigate what the weather looks like. So after Te Araroa, our hiking adventures have just gone to next level. And yeah, I mean, only a couple of weeks ago, we were, on a mountaineering trip with a girlfriend of mine. Um, we all got our ice axes and crampons, and on the first day, we climbed from 100 meters elevation up to 1,500 meters elevation, which was a big day. And, put up our tents on the snow line. The next morning, we fit the crampons and got the ice axes and, climbed on up to 1,900 meters. And yeah, as we speak, I'm just got my kitchens full of dry bags full of food because Emily and I are about to do a 25-day trip with some food resupplies through some fairly rugged country in Tasmania. And it's our hope that either next year or a year or sometime soon that we can go overseas to try one of the longer through hiking trails, either in France. There's a trail called the Hexatrack that I'd very much like to take a look at, or something like the Continental Divide Trail in the States. But all of that, we have such beautiful, wild landscape right here in New Zealand that you could spend years wandering through. And yeah, ever since completing Te Araroa, um, I put my house in Christchurch on the market and sold that. And with the proceeds, I have bought a, lovely little 100-year-old cottage on the west coast of the South Island, which is probably the most beautiful place in the South Island. I am biased, I have to say, but we have wild rivers and amazing lakes and coastline and big hills on the western foothills of the Southern Alps. So, very close to nature, lots of places to go and play. Um, I've written a book, Adventures with Emilie, and it's published by Penguin Random House, so that's out there now. And I do freelance writing articles for various publications, which doesn't earn as much as working, full time as a communications advisor. But I have so much more time for myself and for my daughter and for my well-being, which is really important. And we have another exciting writing project in the wings where we're going to be, Emilie and I will co-author a children's book about 7-year-old Emilie's adventures on Te Araroa, which will be a beautiful story with lots of photographs and illustrations that I'm sure lots of parents, grandparents will like to read.
Excellent. And so, just to be clear, you are able to fund these adventures and live in the cottage on the west coast of the South Island on a freelance writing income in which you don't work full time. Am I getting that picture correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay, you are dirtbag rich. Uh, how how do you manage to to secure these contracts? I feel like the picture you've just painted feels economically infeasible to many people. And so, do you have a special way to pull this off?
Ah, no, I don't think so particularly. I mean, my background is in journalism and communications, and so yeah, writing is sort of my hustle, I guess. We also, at the time where we were walking Te Araroa, we set up some social media channels called Adventures with Emilie to run a few of our, yeah, to run our journey through. And so through that, we, I guess, have a following. And through, being quite active and engaged as a new author, I have, yeah, taken every speaking opportunity that's come my way. Plus also, tried to be proactive with these opportunities, with finding opportunities. But we don't have much money. We are very cash poor. You know, we were recently got some new tramping gear through sponsorship, which was amazing. But otherwise, we just have a very modest little life. Grow vegetables in the garden and collect firewood off the beach. I'm very fortunate that selling my house in the big city, um, you know, gave gave me the profit to be able to purchase this little cottage. Um, so yeah, there isn't big there aren't big pots of money to tap into, but we're making ends meet, and when we're out in the hills, we feel like two little queens. So I think that's where I need to be at this
And
time in my life.
you're not reliant upon any money from family or inheritance or anything like that?
No, I don't have money from family or from inheritance, but in New Zealand we are quite lucky to have a social welfare system as well that people can get support if they don't have if their earnings are not high, or if they live with permanent injury or disability. Um, which is something that we sort of touched on earlier in the conversation about getting diagnosed with complex post-traumatic stress disorder. And for me, yeah, it's just been about exploring not only the events that led to this diagnosis, but actually how it affects, it affects my ongoing struggles and challenges and how it affects me in day-to-day life. So one thing that I've had to, I guess, say to myself and put boundaries on, yeah, how much energy I can expend. Um, and I don't think that working a full-time stressful job, I don't think I would survive doing something like that for very long.
Hmm.
So I just, yeah, working part-time and keeping things small and keeping things real is yeah, better for my well-being.
You again anticipated the direction I wanted to take our conversation in. Uh, I was hoping you could tell a bit more about your early life now. Something I learned by reading your book is that although you don't know much about your own parents' early years, they did live in political squats. They bought an old yacht that sank in a storm, rode bicycles in Morocco and Egypt before bike touring was a cool thing to do. And so you came
Mhm.
from pretty wild, adventurous, semi nomadic parents, and it seems like things seemed pretty rosy for a while.
Hmm. Yeah, it's really interesting. I used to look back on my childhood. I was born in New Zealand to these adventurous Scottish parents. We had a little yacht, a trimaran that my parents attempted to sail around the world when I was less than 2 years old. Me and my brother, we got shipwrecked and ended up living in Australia where we were homeschooled and traveled in a bus with, bikes on the back and canoes on top and bunk beds. Homeschooled until I was 9 years old. And then my parents broke up. My mother left my father one day and took my brother, and they drove away. And I have this memory of sort of standing on the deck of the house and watching this car drive down the long driveway and up over the hump at the end, and then it vanished. And then I don't have a lot of memories from then on. I know that my dad descended into deep depression and alcoholism. I know that I went to conventional school and, developed eating disorders and wagged school and, you know, cut myself listening to Kurt Cobain has seemed to be the thing to do back then in the late 90s. And when things got worse, I eventually went into foster care back in New Zealand, of all places. I was a ward of the state in foster care from 14 to 16 and declared a legal adult at 16, which I think we'll both agree it's a bit young to be released. Your brain's still developing. You're not making very good decisions. You're not really equipped with the tools to manage in this crazy world. And yeah, I went back to Australia, to Brisbane, where I tried to go to school, but I couldn't go to school because I dropped out of school years earlier. Um, I think I tried to do, I don't know, a computer course, but it was too hard. And then I asked my flatmate for some dope to smoke, and he said he didn't have any, but he had some heroin. So I told him to fuck off. And then a few hours later, I was feeling really awful, so I went back out there and had my first experience with injecting heroin when I was 16 years old, which wiped, you know, more than a year off my life and took a long time to recover, to get off heroin because, ironically, the methadone programs, which is like a medical substitute, you're only eligible for 18-year-olds and older.
Wow.
So yeah, I have a memory of, staggering my emaciated self up the hill to the doctor to try to get on this program, being told to get lost. Um, so anyway, time passed in my life and I did come clean of drugs and I did go back to night school to get my university entrance and I had a few false starts, but ended up studying journalism, which I really enjoyed. And I worked in Sydney, and then I took myself to Southeast Asia, and I worked in Burma, Myanmar, as a business journalist, and wanted to be a foreign correspondent. And met Emilie's dad, and got pregnant, and he wasn't interested, but I was 27 years old and or 28 perhaps, and thought that, I should yeah, I had no excuse really to not go through with having a baby. And so I came back to New Zealand and I had a little baby and all the joy and all the wonderful things that, the books and the movies and the labels tell you you'll feel. I didn't feel them. I just felt dead. And that was just, I just knew there was something wrong with me. Um, and somehow at that time is when I first looked up to see a therapist. I thought maybe I had postnatal depression. I felt like, there was a mask, a concrete mask just pulling me down. And I just wanted to weep, cry for days, which was a hard place to be when you have a tiny little person dependent on you. So I went into therapy and the lady asked me questions about my early childhood. And she asked me if I'd ever been raped, had I ever been sexually abused? And I said yes. And she said, well, let's explore some more. And we pulled out a whole heap of events that, actually are not considered normal, actually are considered quite traumatic to young children with, developing brains, young children who don't have caregivers present to hold them and to soothe them and to calm them. Young people like me who, in my 2 years in foster care, I went to maybe 30 different homes. There were multiple, predatory people wanting to hurt you. And earlier, earlier dynamics with my parents, which, although, it sounded lovely on the surface, was actually probably quite damaging and quite hurtful. And all of this exploration culminated in this diagnosis of understanding that, I wasn't damaged or broken or worthless like I felt, but I had developed complex post-traumatic stress disorder. And yeah, that was really the start of a big healing journey, trying to understand what this meant and how it affected me and who was the real me. Once you take away all the kind of adaptations that you've developed to survive these adverse childhood experiences, you know, who are you inside? And I really credit, rediscovering nature and wild places and, the joy of an adventurous lifestyle, for giving me, the time and space to, really come to face with myself and do a lot of, I guess, grieving and forgiveness and healing. And yeah, once that, it's still ongoing, but once a lot of that pain that holds you back is released, um, I know I have felt a lot lighter and a lot more joyful and yeah, a much better person for it all.
Thank you for sharing so openly and vulnerably. And you share even more in the book, um, but never in a way that feels self-pitying. It's just like, here's some hard stuff that I had to go through, and by and large, nature and my relationship with my daughter were the solutions to navigating this. And I'd like to dwell a bit longer on the subject of mother, daughter, parent, child, because you told me in an earlier conversation that you had these experiences that kind of pushed you to need and to want to be in nature. And it's really great that Emilie, at her age, was very enthusiastic to come with you and spend time in nature. But she's also a different person who has a different and much less traumatic background. And she now might want to have a bit more quote unquote normal life, to go to school and not be homeschooled. Maybe, she wants to do something like hike the Continental Divide Trail, which is amazing, but also might not want to keep going on hikes with mom for that much longer. And you mentioned that there's a book called Wave Rider, and it's a seemingly amazing tale of childhood travel on a boat, but really there's a lot of neglect that is taking place behind the scenes there. And so this whole idea of parents adventuring with children, you are very aware it's a fraught subject, and it involves both the needs and the backgrounds of the parent and the child. How are you navigating this? Just tell me what you think about all this. I'll stop right there.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's a big one indeed. I think for me, I guess, because one of my greatest wounds was the lack of maternal and paternal, but the lack of maternal guidance and support from my mother, the mother wound. Um, and so, you know, for me, that has made me want to, be a really good mother to Emilie and, really consider her wants and needs. Um, I want so much for her to grow up feeling great about herself and, knowing that she is loved and supported and knowing that there are, plenty of people around who deeply care for her. So, for Emilie, you know, yes, she's now a 10-year-old girl, she's going through a whole different stage in her development where, having a close connection with mum um remains, very important. And she's also, developing socially where she's having friendships with other people and, you know, building our own, I guess, little tribe or little village over here where there are, other caring people in our lives who she can learn from and attach to and be motivated by and inspired by. So, yeah, I guess it is a balance that we're trying to achieve between, you know, supporting Emilie to achieve what her own goals, what she is interested in, pursue what she's interested in. Um, yeah, as well as me pursuing what I'm interested in. And very fortunately for us, she is, yeah, very motivated, very keen um, to go tramping. And I think I've noticed that when she was little, we would be able to spend a lot of time together. But now definitely drawing on the energy of other people, bringing other people into our trips. Yeah, Emilie really, we both really like this. So we can, yeah, have adventures with friends which can, also fulfill that need for the social emotional connection. But yeah, Emily's 10 years old. She doesn't have a device. We have the internet on at home, so we can, stream documentaries or movies if we want to. But yeah, we don't. It's never been our style to, have be very device focused or TV focused. Um, I see a lot of kids who, I think their brain development gets definitely altered by too much time on their device. They don't seem to know how to do creative play. Um, yeah, I know from my own experience that there's a lot of busyness and stress when, you know, children are kind of stuck in this busy world too soon. And so, yeah, when I see Emilie out there in the hills, laughing her head off or, you know, skipping by the tarns or, yeah, collecting tadpoles, I can see that she is just loving her life. Um, and it's filling her with all these, warm and wonderful experiences.
Let me ask you one final question. Back just before you started the Te Araroa, when you were dealing with the burnout, PTSD, the stress, the house, and you were making the decision to rent it out, to go hiking for 6 months, to go on this huge adventure that could go very sideways. Like, what were some of the worries or concerns that you had at that moment that later turned out to be not really something you need to worry about? And if the opposite is true, if there was something you weren't concerned about, but you realized later on, oh, maybe I should have been concerned about that, I'm curious to hear that too. Mostly, what were your expectations and your anxieties, and how did they evolve? And I'm asking this question for anyone out there who might be thinking about embarking on an adventure of similar magnitude.
Yeah, absolutely. I think for me, I'd worked so hard in my life to, develop my career and get, a quote unquote good job, stable job with local government. And I had just, bought this house, and I thought, oh my God, I'm going to lose it all. I'm going to lose it all, and I'm going to have nothing. And yeah, everything will be taken from me. And that was a big fear. Oh, I'm going to quit my job. I'll never work again. I'll never get hired again. Um, and that, yeah, these were big fears. And I'm delighted to tell you that yeah, things change. You walk up, the whole saying of closing one door and another door opens. I have worked in the communications industry since completing Te Araroa at a senior level, actually, and a part-time contract, which was very nice to work from home. All the flexibility that I didn't have at my previous role. Um, you know, like I said, we're not flush with cash, but I own my own house almost outright, which is very nice. And yeah, my writing career has or is developing. And yeah, I think, you know, maybe we might be world famous in the New Zealand outdoor community, but if you say the name, Adventures with Emilie or Victoria and Emilie, um, in the New Zealand outdoor community, yeah, a lot of people know who we are, which is very lovely. I certainly don't feel so disconnected or lonely or afraid, like I did when I was, struggling to juggle that big, busy job in the big city. Um, yeah, I think that things will always work out, and that's really part of the journey is yeah, just seeing where things will take you.
And for those who want to find your book or follow future adventures with Emilie, what is the best way for them to do that or to find you online?
Yeah, absolutely. So we are on Instagram and Facebook on Adventures with Emilie. That's Emilie. And you can also find my book, Adventures with Emilie, online. If you are not in Australia or New Zealand, you can purchase it as an ebook, or you can order it through Amazon or any of those sites, Adventures with Emilie. And if you are an international publisher listening to this podcast, well, you should purchase the rights.
There are some international
And
rights that are available.
yeah,
Yes.
absolutely. There you go.
Victoria, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Blake. It's been wonderful.